Hello and welcome to a horribly nerdy podcast, the podcast that's so bad, horrible is in its name. Today we're going to be talking about Spyro the Dragon, a rape revenge movie, retail horror story of the week, and of course our comic book of the week. And a little bit of paranormal flair, but that'll be a surprise for later.
It's time for a retro video game review!
Today's retro video game review of the week is Spyro the Dragon, made in 1998 for the original PlayStation. Spyro the Dragon is a 3D platforming game in which you have to travel from homeworld to homeworld and save and unlock the dragons that have all been turned into stone by Nasty Nork and his minions. You are a young purple dragon by the name of Spyro, obviously, and you have a dragonfly friend named Sparks, who, depending on the color of his, tells you how many hits you can take. When he's gold, you have 3 hits before you pass away. So, there are 5 dragon homeworlds that the Nasty Nork and his minions have taken over and turned all the other dragons into crystals. And the easiest way to actually go up and unlock the dragons is by you just pretty much walk up and step on their little platform thing. They unlock, they give you a piece of advice, they kind of progress the game a little bit, or sometimes they help you unlock an ability. So basically your abilities are the fire breath, a head-on charging attack, and a mid-air glide. And as the games progress, and I mean, of course, Spyro ended up becoming a huge franchise, you unlock more and more powers and abilities. But these 3 standard are at the beginning of this game, and that's pretty much all you need. There are certain chests and unlockables that you have to heat up and explode. With your fire breath, it's just literally you press the circle button and it's just little, I think it's 3 or 4 little spouts of fire that spread in a wide arc. Unfortunately, you don't get like a flamethrower effect or anything like that. You get a charging head attack with you pretty much headbutt people with your horns and stuff like that, all while defeating the minions and everything. And it's a super fun game. You collect jewels and crystals, and there's certain points where if there's a firecracker or a rocket and you're not sure, if you light it on fire, it'll go and it'll unlock. There's these chests with little lock bars on them, and it'll explode those chests, and you'll get the jewels in that. If you're gonna try and go for a 101% completion of this, you have to replay a ton of the levels because there are certain gems you can't get to without unlocking your abilities over time. So when I played this, I wanted to do 100%, but I couldn't do it. It was just long and tedious. Not to say that that's a bad thing. The game is fun. It does have replay value, of course, but for me, it was just, I beat the game. I had fun with it. It was just time to move on. It is a really fun game, and one thing that I really love about this design is, of course, the 3D platforming. Instead of just being a regular, basically, screen scroller, it's an open world. Sparks eats these butterflies in order to gain his strength back, which then gives Spyro his power and stuff, and you unlock those butterflies by by destroying things like sheep and other little animals that run around. You can also sometimes get butterflies by killing an enemy, and usually an enemy will drop a jewel or 2 as well. One thing about this is the music. Fantastic, absolutely beautiful soundtrack. I was so surprised. It's one of those that really gets in your head. You remember it, and it's very nostalgic for me. And it's no wonder the soundtrack was done really well, because it was done by Stuart Copeland, the former drummer for The Police. He composed the game's music. The characters and voice actors, Spyro is done by Carlos Alzachary, and then there are additional voices by Clancy Brown, Michael Goh, and Jamie Allcroft. Super fun game. Like I said, there's just a lot of play value to this. For me, it's 1,000% the soundtrack, which does it for me. If you have a good soundtrack, and just something where I can just go through and play a video game, play a game, and I just kind of sit back and really get into that soundtrack, that score and everything, I'll play it all day long. I don't care. He was given Stuart Copeland of the Police composed the music, like I was saying earlier. He was given early bills of the game's levels, which he played through to get a feel for them and to come up with a fitting composition. He was also given game cheats such as invincibility, so he would have an easier time clearing the levels. He wrote 4 songs per day, all of which he further developed and polished the next day. According to Copeland, each song in the game was written to correspond to a specific level, but unfortunately it went unused, but he does look back positively, calling the game's music one of his best compositions. And I would agree, this first game with soundtrack, it's amazing. I'm probably going to add some underneath as we're speaking, so I definitely, if you can kind of, and I'll stop talking for a bit so you can hear some of the music too. I'll put like my favorite music tracks on it, of course. But please, definitely check this out. It's worth finding. It's worth playing. It's a fun game. It's out there somewhere. There's videos on YouTube about it, stuff like that. Definitely highly recommend it. I give it 4 dragonflies out of 5. Spyro the Dragon. Check it out. Let me know what you think.
And now a horribly nerdy film review.
A young woman is having an affair with a married man. They are away at a secluded cabin in the desert, basically. Well, cabin, more like mansion in a desert. When his 2 hunting buddies come by, and they see this beautiful young naive blonde woman, and one is just completely taken with her. While the man she's having an affair with heads into town to do a couple things, one of the hunters rapes the young woman, and she has had enough. She runs out. The man comes home. She explains to him what happens. He is not willing to do anything to help her. He won't even chastise his friend, and that's when she says she's going to tell his wife about the affair. Well, he reacts badly, and realizing he's going to lose half of his possessions and probably all of his money, he says, "If you tell my wife, I'm going to murder you before you even have a chance to." So she freaks out. She runs out of the place, runs into the desert. All 3 men are chasing her down. She gets cornered on this cliff, and the man she's having an affair with pushes her off the cliff, and she is impaled on a broken tree. Before the men have a chance to get down there and get the body, she awakens, hauls herself off the tree, drags herself into a cave, basically cauterizes her own wound, and she is no longer now that what we were perceived to be this young, naive, possibly bimbo-like woman, and we find out that she is a badass. She has cauterized her wound, and she is now seeking her revenge. And it was an awesome movie. I guess I've said before on this podcast that, like, I'm not super into the rape revenge movies. I think rape is just one of the most horrible things on the planet, and I wish it didn't happen. Just horrifying, and it's disgusting, and, well, all kinds of shit. I just don't understand rape at all. But, this movie, like the brutalization, this poor girl, she gets brutalized so badly. The extent of her injury, like, she should be dead. Like, that tree is just impaled right through her abdomen. She breaks off, like, the top part poking out of her, and she, like, climbs off of it. It's just, oh Jesus, it's horrifying. And then she turns into this badass, just getting revenge on these guys that, attempted to kill her, especially the one that raped her. And the one, of course, it leads to this awesome showdown between, her and her captors or whatever. Badass movie. Highly recommend it. I give it 3.5 broken tree stumps out of 5. Check out Revenge. Let me know what you think. Here is some behind the scenes for Revenge. The director claims that the film featured so much blood that the prop team would often run out of fake blood. Some mild spoilers here, so please be prepared. But it is actually a very interesting piece of trivia. Besides being about revenge, there are also mystical themes throughout the film, like rebirth and transformation. This is illustrated when, at the beginning, she gets pushed off of the cliff and lands impaled on the tree in a Christ-like pose. She then uses a lighter to ignite fire underneath the tree and have the trunk burn off and break off to free herself. This is exactly like the phoenix that ignites itself and then rises from its own ashes to be reborn. Later, to cauterize the wound on her side from being impaled, she takes peyote to tolerate the pain, and she drinks a beer with the brand name of Phoenix Beer with a phoenix on it. Once she is finished with the beer, she cuts a square out of the aluminum can, burns it over a fire, and once it's hot enough, she sticks it over the wound to seal it. This leaves the cauterized permanent imprint of the phoenix from the can on her stomach. The phoenix is an alchemical symbol of rebirth and transformation. From this point on, the protagonist transforms and her meditative, bloody, violent revenge begins. Director Coralie Fargeet mentioned Wild at Heart, Drive, Under the Skin, and the films of David Cronenberg as references for the film in her pitch to potential financiers. The music was inspired by the works of John Carpenter, Etienne Jomet, and Thomas Bangalter. Our protagonist, Jen, has no actual speaking lines until after the 26-minute mark of the film. I would say some more trivia, but a lot of it is pretty spoiler heavy, and so let's not get into it. Oh, there's some good stuff here though. Fuck. No, let's not get into it. I don't want to spoil it too much. Like I said earlier, I highly, highly recommend this film. It was so good. It was done so well. And just the way she gets her revenge, A+, brutal revenge. Fucking love it. Revenge is directed by Coralie Fargeet, and I'm probably butchering that, and I do apologize for that. And stars Matilda and Ingrid Lutz, Kevin Janssens, and Vincent Colombe. I'm probably saying that wrong. Colombe, Colombe. Please check this one out. Crazy. Again, I'm not super into rape revenge movies, but this one, like, her revenge is awesome. It's definitely well deserved on all parties involved. And not only that, but just the way it was shot, the landscapes, everything is done so well in this film. I highly recommend it. It's a good modern day revenge film. Highly recommend it. Let me know what you think.
The Retail Horror Story of the Week.
Back when I was in high school, probably 2001 to 2003, my first real job was at a Meijer, and it was cart pusher / bagger. And one day, bagging groceries and stuff, and I'm talking to the manager, we're just BSing, and all of a sudden we hear this horrifying scream, and it's over and over. And the next thing we know, there's a giant crowd gathered at the front of the doors. Well, it turns out a husband and wife were arguing, and the husband punched his wife in the face and grabbed their daughter and was making for the door. He was going to kidnap their daughter. And, people witnessed this, and they were, they tackled him and they held him down on the ground until police got there. And I'll just never forget those screams. That sound was just horrifying. It was one of the scariest things I think I've heard in in my life, because that was fucking crazy. But, back then I used to be I always wanted to be like this hero, this superhero that would, stop something like that. That's why I always wanted to do store security and always have like that encounter or something. And I remember telling my manager, like, oh damn, I wish I could have done something to help, or done something to stop that. My managers told me, they're like, oh, be glad you didn't, because they would have fired you. And I was like, what? They're like, oh yeah, anytime you get involved in anything like that, that's an immediate firing. I said, so if I saw someone kidnapping someone and I went to put a stop to it, I would be fired. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what would happen. If you were to intervene at all with a customer in any situation like that, that's an instant fire. It's like, that's fucked up. So I'm just supposed to sit there, and what if I'm the only witness to this, someone's being kidnapped, and I want to keep my job, so go ahead and kidnap her, have a good day. Like, fuck that. I would easily lose that job for something like that. That job sucked. But yeah, I never understood, like, dude, you punched your wife in the face in a crowded store with cameras, and you tried to kidnap your own child. Like, how fucking dumb are you? I don't understand people's rationale. I get it. Okay, I get temporary insanity or some shit like that, but come on. Like, I watched, back when, Dateline used to do that To Catch a Predator stuff, and I always like, there can't be that many sick people out there. And they talk about how they, in 3 days they had 75 men stop by to have sex with a minor. Like, what the fuck? What is going on with this world? I know this was supposed to be a retail horror story, but I'm going to go off on a rant here, so excuse me for a minute. Like, I've looked up the sex offender registry around my area, and oh my goodness, the number of people that live in my area that are on the registry, it's like, good Lord, I don't understand people's minds. Is it a sickness? Or is it a control thing? Like, what the? I don't understand. I don't get it. I have never, ever felt compelled to seduce and, oh God, it makes me want to throw up just saying it. Do anything with a child, nor have I ever compelled to force myself upon someone or expose myself to someone. I don't get it. What in your brain? What in God's name in your fucking brain clicks that you think that's a great idea? That's gonna be something that won't cause issues. That's disgusting. I don't understand it. It's horrifying. Jesus, what the fuck? I'm sorry. Again, I am sorry. I went off on a rant, but Jesus Christ. I don't get people. I don't know. I'm going to shut up now, but that was my retail horror story of the week and my rant on I don't understand people's brains and the sickness, and I'm shutting up. Let's talk about the Michigan Melonheads. The Melonheads of Michigan are said to reside around the Felt Mansion, although they have also been reportedly seen in southern forested areas of Ottawa country. According to one story, they were originally children with hydrocephalus. That's the word I'm looking for. Who lived at the Junction Insane Asylum near Felt Mansion. The story explains that after enduring physical and emotional abuse, they became feral and were released into the forest surrounding the asylum. The Allegan County Historical Society asserts that the asylum never existed, although it was at one point a prison. However, the story has been part of the local folklore for several decades. Laketown Township manager Al Meshkin told the Holland Sentinel that he had heard tales of the teenager, noting that his friends referred to the beings as wobbleheads. Some versions of the legend say that the children once lived in the mansion itself, but later retreated to a system of caverns or caves in a nearby hill left over from an abandoned zoo. Some versions of this legend say that the children devised a plan to escape and killed the doctor that abused them. It is said that the children had no place to hide the body, so they cut it up in small pieces which they hid around the mansion. Rumors exist that teenagers who had broken into the mansion saw ghosts of the children and even claimed to see shadows of the doctor's murder through the light coming from an open door. The legend has spread throughout the region, even become the subject of a 2011 film simply titled The Melonheads, which is based around the West Michigan legend. There is also a legend in Ohio. The Melonhead stories of Ohio are primarily associated with the Cleveland suburb of Kirtland. According to local lore, the Melonheads were originally orphans under the watch of a mysterious figure known as Dr. Crow. Crow is said to have performed unusual experiments on the children, who developed large, hairless heads and malformed bodies. Some accounts claim that the children were already suffering from hydrocephalus, and that Crow injected even more fluid into their brains. If you're wondering what hydrocephalus is, it's a condition in which the accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, occurs within the brain. This typically causes increased pressure inside the skull. Older people may have headaches, double vision, poor balance, urinary incontinence, personality changes, or mental impairment. In babies, it may be seen as a rapid increase in head size. Other symptoms may include vomiting, sleepiness, seizures, and downward pointing of the eyes. Back to the Ohio legend. Eventually, the legend continues that the children killed Crow, burned the orphanage, and retreated to the surrounding forests and supposedly feed on babies. Legend holds that the Melonheads may be sighted along Wisner Road in Kirtland and Chardon Township. The Melonhead legend has been popularized on the internet, particularly on the websites Creepy Cleveland and Dead Ohio, where users offer their own versions of the story. A movie, The Legend of the Melonheads, released in 2010, is based on the Ohio legend and various other legends in the Kirtland area. As you can see, the legends are very similar, the Michigan and the Ohio legend. There was an asylum, there was a doctor. There's also a legend in Connecticut. Several variations of the Melonhead legend can be found throughout southwest Connecticut, especially in central and eastern Fairfield County and western New Haven County, Connecticut. In eastern Fairfield County, many tales can be found in communities such as Trumbull, Shelton, Stratford, Monroe, Easton, and Weston. In Weston and central New Haven County, tales can be found in towns like Seymour, Oxford, Milford, and Southbury. Why does every state have like a Milford and Oxford? Like Michigan has one, I believe Ohio has one. Like what is so popular about those names? Anyways, I'm going off on a rant again. There are several primary Connecticut variations. According to one variation of the myth, Fairfield County was the location of an asylum for the criminally insane that burned down in the fall of 1960, resulting in the death of all the staff and most of the patients, with 10 to 20 inmates unaccounted for, supposedly having survived and escaped to the woods. The legend states that the Melonheads' appearance is the result of them having resorted to cannibalism in order to survive the harsh winters of the region, and due to inbreeding, which in turn caused them to develop hydrocephalus. Some retellings of this version substitute the asylum or prison with places of business or campgrounds, and the inmates' patients with employees, staff, or campgoers. Individual variations will modify what town these individuals were originally from and where they end. See, again, these are all very similar stories. That there was an asylum, there was possibly a doctor, they all escaped into the woods, and there's this small community thriving out there of these Melonheads. Continuing on in Connecticut, according to the second variation, the Melonheads are descendants of a colonial-era family from Shelton, Trumbull, who were banished after accusations of witchcraft were made against them, causing them to retreat to the woods. Again, another retreating to the woods, common theme in this legend. As with the first version of this legend, the variation attributes the appearance of the Melonheads to inbreeding. Melonheads allegedly prey upon humans who wander into their territory. Like the first version, individual retellings will modify what town the family was originally from and where they end up. So another legend in Sagatuck, Michigan. The Melonheads. They're little people with large heads and said to creep around the woods of Allegan County. Stories of their origin differ, but one thing's for sure, they've scared a lot of people. I can see if you're there by yourself or with one other person and you hear something you're not used to hearing, your imagination will start to run away with you, said Scott Kuykendall of the Allegan County Historical Society. Or it could be a Melonhead. The vast networks of trails in Laketown Township surrounding the Felt Mansion and Sagatuck Dune State Park are said to be haunted by this mysterious band of creatures. You do hear stories of older people saying, well, when I was a teenager, in the 1950s, we would be out there and see glowing eyes in the woods. So, the most common description of these creatures are, of course, a very slender body with a giant orb-like head, and there's a lot of claims of their eyes glow. There is legend that they live in an underground series of tunnels, sometimes jumping out to attack people and eat them. So according to StrangeUSA.com, there is an asylum located near the Felt Mansion. It is a small building that is behind the BMX track. It is all broken up and windows are busted due to kids. At night, if you were to go around and look around the house, curtains in the window move and windows open and close, and strange lights are often visible in them. If you were to go inside and walk around, you can hear heavy breathing, loud footsteps, screams, and even able to see silhouettes of figures walking around. Sometimes you can feel as though something walked through you, and sometimes you may encounter a sudden pain in the wrists of your hands. All over the place has just a creepy feel to it. So, if this is a true encounter that people are describing, it sounds like a typical haunting kind of thing. Maybe these Melonheads are egregores. Maybe they've been talked about and focused on the spot so much that perhaps these Melonheads are actually starting to appear. Again, the most common, most likely origin of this story is that they were children with hydrocephalus that lived near Felt Mansion, or possibly at an insane asylum nearby, or just a medical asylum, or something like that. And because, you know, they were strange looking and out of place, of course, these legends just, you know, they skyrocket and they roll downhill, everything like that. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, these poor children suffering this condition, you know, years later they become this scary legend that, you know, these things eat people and attack them and all that, when it's just in reality just a disability. You know, it just goes to show, like, our fucking world, man. Like, God forbid you be different from someone. It's just such a shame, but, you know, this legend is rampant. I've heard about this legend for years. You know, there's always that friend of a friend that knows a guy that knows a person that encountered one of these things. There's always that. So, I don't know, it's interesting. Maybe these are egregores. Maybe there is a feral community of Melonhead children. Who knows? I'm pretty sure, if there really was, I'm pretty sure this legend is popular enough that there would have been maybe an expedition or an adventure or something where we find these things. But maybe they are from another universe and they're able to pass through, and that's what we're seeing. Who knows? That's the beauty of mystery and the beauty of the universe. Who the fuck knows? Thank you all so much for tuning into this week's episode of A Horribly Nerdy Podcast. You may have noticed there was no comic book or graphic novel of the week. That is because next week we're actually going to cover about 4 or 5 graphic novels. Just some stuff that I've picked up recently that I really, really want to talk about. If you would like to support this podcast, you can become a patron at patreon.com/horriblynerdy. There are, I believe, 3 different tiers right now. You can, every tier includes shout out on the podcast, stickers when they become available, and there's even a tier where you can choose a horrible movie for me to watch and review. If you want to torture me, that is fine with me. You go right ahead. The worst, the better. And before I go, I want to give a shout out to my clan in Dungeon Crushers Mobile. Full Metal Jacket, you guys are awesome. You guys have been super, super cool ever since I joined, giving me advice, helping me out. I've played this game for years. I haven't been able to really progress, but you guys have given me so many tips and tricks to progress, and I really appreciate that. You are all super awesome. Thank you all so much. Again, thank everyone for tuning into this week's episode, and I will see you next week for next week's episode.